You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, good to have you back at the podcast. You're listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and I am Mighty Blue, or Steve Adams. A few weeks ago, I was at Trail Days in Damascus, hanging out at the author's tent, selling a few of my books, and meeting a bunch of friends and podcast listeners. One of my fellow authors, Emily Leonard, was there with her husband Bruce, selling her books, and we had a bit of a chat. She has such a terrific story that I invited her to come on the show and share it with you all. Emily will be on in a moment. Then we hear from one of our surviving Mighty Blue class of 2022, Dom Tammaro, who is pushing on and has just passed the Virginia Triple Crown of Dragon's Tooth, MacAfee Knob and Tinker Cliffs. Dom will share his stories about that truly awesome stretch. And with Katie Westling back on the trail and filling in some of the miles she missed out on last year, we catch up with her again. She's actually just about to hit the same Triple Crown that Dom has just finished, and she updates us on a couple of hostels she's visited since she came back. Finally, we finish up Chapter 3 of George Stefanos' Then the Hell Came, with George getting to the end of the Smokies with a very empty pack. By the way, I heard from George this week, and I'm going to share some of what he said to me. But let's hear first from Emily Leonard, or Black Bear. I met today's guest at Trail Days this year with her husband Bruce. This is Emily Leonard, or Black Bear. Hey Emily, how are you?
Hi Steve, I'm fine, thank you.
Do you enjoy Trail Days, by the way?
I loved it. It wasn't what I expected. I was actually afraid to go and ended up, we can't wait to go next year.
I bet you can't. You know, It's funny if I noticed, I was watching you and Bruce quite often, that you both look very comfortable with each other. I think having that support along with you really helps, doesn't it?
It sure does. I've got the biggest fan in the whole world.
I could tell. Now, you're less like a black bear than pretty much anyone I can imagine, actually. So how on earth did you get that trail name?
It stemmed because I didn't want to, I just saw, I have that same cup you have. I didn't mean to.
Oh, really? You got the Appalachian?
I do. I have that cup.
This is from Woods Hole.
Mine came from the AT Lodge in Millinocket.
Oh, how interesting. There you go. Okay.
So I got my trail name because I wanted to name myself because I can be pretty silly and pretty ditzy. And I was just afraid of what I might be called. So I went into this forward thinking with my own trail name.
So you decided to be Black Bear and not Blonde Bear.
Exactly.
Because you are blonde. So you decided not to buy into the stereotype of the blonde. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so the mascot was the University of Maine's mascot is a black bear.
All right.
So that's why I chose the black bear. But I can be pretty grouchy and pretty mean also. So that's another underlying reason. You saw me at my best at Trail Days.
Oh, good Lord. I can't imagine you being anything other than that. You seem very sort of chill and laid back. So were you happy with your trail name? Was that a good choice, do you think?
Yes, it was a very good choice.
Why is that? Because it's funny, you know, we do kind of grow into our trail names, don't we? And you must have met people who you only now think of as that trail name, don't you? And I know that a lot of people know I'm Mighty Blue and have no idea that I'm Steve.
Yeah, exactly. I have friends that we communicate with and we call them by their trail names. I hardly ever use their real names. And for one of them, I didn't even know their real name for the longest time, even a few years later, even communicating with them and visiting them.
It's funny. It is funny how that goes, it really is. So as I say, we met at Trail Days at the author's tent, and I will come on to your books later. But first, I wanted to know about not only your 2015 Appalachian Trail thru-hike, but you went again in 2017, as I always say, because I've done it myself twice. What person is foolish enough to go a second time? But let's go first to how that first hike came about. So what happened?
It wasn't even my idea. It was my friend's idea to go on the hike. And our children went to school together, and when the last one was in high school, their senior year, she's like, do you want to go hike the Appalachian Trail when the kids graduate? And I hadn't even thought about it. And I showed the text message to my husband, and he's like, I think you should do it. And that's how it started.
Did you ever ask him why he readily agreed so quickly?
No, he's just a wonderful guy. And he knows that I had been, a stay-at-home mom, gave up my career. So he thought this was a chance for me to get out and do something for myself.
Was that the thing? You just wanted, nobody regrets bringing their children up and having a certain life. But do you feel you missed out on a career then?
No, not really, because I had a degree in education, so I used that along the way. Use a lot of it, teaching my kids at school, at home. I didn't homeschool, but we used those skills at home. And I also kept involved with coaching and substitute teaching, so I was still using my degree, in a different way. Mm-hmm.
And the idea, why the Appalachian Trail? Was it something that appealed? Because you come from Maine, you said, and I know you obviously knew about the Appalachian Trail. Had it ever crossed your mind to be something you'd like to at some stage?
Never. I had never even backpacked before. Not at all.
Why? Hang on. In that case, let's step back a second. Yeah. So she said, let's go. Your husband said, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Didn't you wonder for a moment, why is that a good idea?
Nope. Like you said, it takes someone crazy to do this thing twice. So it was adventure. It was something that seemed like neat to do. And right as soon as that night, we my husband and I watched a documentary. I think it was a National Geographic documentary.
Sure.
And it showed the AT in all her glory. And we're like, yeah, that's awesome.
Did it look easy in that documentary?
Yes, it did.
Because nobody could afford to film the bits where you're about to die, could they?
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so it just, not a day went by where we didn't plan. But then it wasn't her, then she wasn't able to go. Life threw her a knuckleball and she wasn't able to go. But I was too excited, so I went anyways. But then
now, did that give your husband pause that you were, sorry, that's not fair as well. I shouldn't say just because you're the woman, but
that's okay.
Did it not give either of you pause that you were going by yourself, or were you quite comfortable from how you'd researched that this was a safe thing to do as a single female? I
didn't even give it a second thought, neither did my husband or our children, but the rest of my family and friends they were quite worried.
I bet they were, yeah. And don't you find it strange? You have to sometimes defend your actions when it comes to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did some of those conversations work out then?
I just learned to start ignoring them. Said I'm going. Doesn't matter.
You can take a gun. You can all that sort of things.
Yeah. My oldest brother, grew up hunting and fishing and doing all that stuff. And my oldest brother, John, said he would buy me my own handgun if I would take it. And I said, no, John, I'm not going to carry a gun. But looking back, I should have let him do that so I could add one to my collection and just not have carried it.
So you mentioned before when we spoke that you've been an athlete in your life. Yes. So you're not used to the stresses and strains of the physicality of hiking. Right. So did you feel comfortable that you were able to take the physicality?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't. I knew I wasn't in great shape when I went, but I wasn't good enough to where I knew and confident enough to know that, I would be able to do it. And the big thing is once I put my mind to something, I usually accomplish it.
Yeah, yeah. And as you found out, though, it is quite a physical challenge. And you said you've been an athlete, but hiking a very long distance, is something entirely different, and the impact upon your body, isn't it? How did you actually prepare physically for this trip?
I really didn't do much. I just kept walking our dog. We live on a camp road, so a dirt road with some trails out back, and I just threw my pack on and walked the dog for a few miles a day, and that was it. And then when the winter came and it got too cold, for 2 months before I started the trail, I didn't even do anything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you felt pretty well prepared when you stood on the top of Springer Mountain, is that right?
Yeah. Actually, we did. The trails down south are a lot easier than up here in Maine. So it was a pretty easy start for us. And I know some people are going to not like me hearing that.
Right. They're easier than Maine, but they're not that easy. God,
So I didn't have a problem in the beginning. It was just the day after day that, of doing it every day that I had to get used to.
That is definitely a mindset, isn't it? How did you adjust to that daily thing? It almost becomes a job, doesn't it?
Yes, it was. I actually, for being a fairly positive person that I tend to be, the trail was really, it was making me become miserable, a very negative outlook on life. And I didn't like that because I tend to be a very positive person.
Yeah.
But just day after day in the grind and the wind and the rain and the cold and everything all mixed together, I just wasn't having a good time. And then I just had a conversation with myself and said, you can either complain or go home. And I said, well, I'm not going home. So I had to stop
just
complaining. Yeah. No, because that was draining me, doing all that complaining. So I just found the joy in the little things.
Yeah. But before you stepped on trail, you had to get your gear. And I know, I wrote down what you said when we first spoke. You said, I guess I knew that I needed a backpack. That's a pretty baseline to start from, isn't it? So how did you start accumulating your gear? What were the important things for you?
I first decided, because, we're just like most families out there, you live paycheck to paycheck. So being a stay-at-home mom, I decided to get a job, and I applied at L.O. Bean here in Maine.
Uh-huh.
We have an outlet store close to our house.
Right.
So I got that so I could get a discount on a lot of my gear. And the first thing I got, that was very nice.
I bet they really appreciate hearing that.
Yes. And so I got a pack, the first thing I did. But then I didn't like that pack. And so I switched it out. And, then just so, I knew it needed poles. So I would go and find poles and research tents and did tents. So basically, the big five, you have your tent, your poles, your backpack.
Sleeping bag.
Sleeping bag.
Yeah,
and I guess your pad.
Yeah. So you bought your stuff.
Yeah.
And did most of your gear work out for you, or did you have to make changes along the way?
Other than I changed my pack before I even got started. I went with a lighter pack because the pack I'd chosen originally weighed 5 pounds empty. So I just
did mine first time.
So I just switched to an ultralight pack.
Right. And that makes a big difference, isn't it, straight away? It really does. Yeah. So you got to Springer. Did Bruce come down and see you off, or did you go by yourself?
No, he drove me down. And
that's a bit of a drive, isn't it? Blimey.
Yeah, he's used to traveling for a living when he's not working at home. So, we're up for road trips. So he drove me down. His parents drove up from Florida to meet us off. And I had a lady that I followed. She hiked in 2014. So she and her husband met us at Springer. So it was really nice.
How did you make that contact then?
I was following her through trail journals.
All right, yeah.
And when they got to Maine in 2014, I had reached out to them and said, when you get to Maine, I'll help you out. And so I went over and met them and did trail magic, and we just stayed friends. And so
is that community of hikers wonderful? You didn't know them for very long at all, did you? And yet they come and they want to support you to go. Yep. I had a guy called Robert Thomas who drove 2 hours to have dinner with me the night before I went in Georgia in 2019. You think to yourself, why would you do that? But they feel vested in your success, don't they?
Yeah.
Who was the person in 2014? Because I went in 2014 first time.
It was, I believe.
Okay.
And her name is
I don't
Sherry
believe
Spellman.
I met her. I don't believe I met her.
Her husband is Jimmy, and he does a lot of interviews with hikers, and he continues to do so every year. And he posts them on on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, because once the trail's in your blood, it never leaves you, does it?
It really doesn't, and that's the hardest thing about being home, is that I miss everyone and everything about the trail.
Has it shifted your perception of the difference between trail life and home life? Because you probably thought this is an adventure you'd be able to go and leave behind, but you've come back home, you're living it all the time because you're writing about it as well.
Right.
Does it make you, and I don't want Bruce to hear this bit, but does it make you dissatisfied then with your home life compared to the trail life?
Oh, he can hear it. He knows.
I know.
He actually suffers from it too. He just said the other day, he goes, I wish there was a way we could make an income of doing nothing except things that related to the trail. And that's him. And he didn't even hike it through hike it. He just supported me.
Yeah.
I actually went through that awful post-trail depression.
Sure.
You know, and I'm thinking, oh, that's never going to happen to me. I'm an upbeat person. It's not going to happen. And I suffered big time from it. And then when I did it again, I went through it all over again. And to be honest, I don't even know if I've recovered from it this time.
Right. I think it's part of it stays with you, stays within your head. I think about the trail literally every single day.
Yeah.
There are times during the day I don't think about it, but generally I have a thought, and obviously doing the podcast doesn't really help because I'm involved in it, but it kind of really does. It just stays with you so much, doesn't it?
It does.
You mentioned that you thought it was quite easy down south. I don't think that's easy. I think the state of Georgia is much tougher. It was a real smack in the face of me. So did that physical challenge, you met that pretty easily because you found it relatively easy?
Mm-hmm. That part was easy, but dealing with the bad weather, because we started in early March.
Right.
And I say we because I actually had a hiking partner for the first 2.5 weeks.
Right. Nice.
We met at LOB, and he came in to buy a jacket, and he needed a ride to the trail, and my extended family and friends wanted me to have a hiking partner. So
sure.
So I started with a hiking partner at first, and the rain was just miserable, and so that was tough to get used to.
Yeah, you said it rained 4 out of the first 5 nights.
Yes.
Did you at that stage start reconsidering your choice, or do you fall back on the fact that once I say I'm going to do something, I do it?
Exactly. Yeah, there was only one time that I really thought that I couldn't do it. Two times, but one where I really had a big breakdown, and Bruce dropped me back off at the trail. I would spend the night in the hotel, and he sent me away, and I was just crying, and he never said, he was so strong. He knew I didn't want to quit. I just needed to vent, but I was really struggling. And he says, I can hear his voice yelling to me as I'm hiking away into the woods. I love you. You can do it. You're awesome. Not once did he say, why don't you just get back in the car and I'll take you home? He didn't say that. He was strong enough to know that I was just whining.
Now, do you know what? There is a man who has learned the secret, which I've never learned myself, by the way. Men often feel the need to provide a response to their partner's bitching and moaning, don't they?
Yes.
But all the partner wants is to be listened to. Someone to vent at. Good for Bruce. He understood the concept. Excellent. That's great. And you got an injury, didn't you? With your feet, which actually was quite long lasting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's not necessarily an injury other than a problem that I have with my feet. Right. The metatarsals, they hurt all the time.
Even before you hiked?
Yes, they started hurting after.
Oh, wow.
I had bilateral bunion surgery.
Okay.
And they never, it's when you get those bunions on your big toe.
Sure. Oh, right.
Yeah, so I had them both done at the same time years ago.
Right.
But one of them never really healed, and I think the surgery caused other problems. So the bottoms of my feet, the pads right in the pad, they just excruciating pain and numb and burning, and no footwear really helped. But
it doesn't sound like you're ready to do a 2,200-mile hike. So what was that? Did you treat with ibuprofen or something?
I did. I lived on ibuprofen and Tylenol and Aleve. And
I had my numbers.
I would take Tylenol in the morning. Ibuprofen in the morning, Tylenol for lunch, and Aleve for supper.
Ooh, lovely.
Or bedtime.
A special.
Yeah.
What a diet.
Yeah, it was, just to make, and the only thing that really helped was rest. Yeah. So I would hike a few hours, rest, and I hike slow, so it took me all day to do it.
Yeah, but, there's no race, is it? That's the wonderful thing about Katahdin. The slowest person still gets a gold medal, don't they, really?
Yeah.
As long as you get there, you're good to go. So you mentioned you started with a guy hiking, got to Fontana Dam, did he?
Fontana, correct. Yeah.
And he got off the trail.
He got off the trail.
How different was your hike after that? Because there's a definite difference between hiking with somebody and hiking by yourself.
I didn't hike alone.
Oh, right.
That morning is he decided not to go.
Right.
Bruce and I were worried. I was scared about going into the Smokies and the Whites alone.
Sure.
And as
sure.
he was saying, I was waiting for Bruce to get off a phone call, and I was crying again. The trail really brought out emotions I never knew I had.
Yeah.
I used to be strong, but now I cry at the drop of a hat, hearing stories about the trail, and it's just awful. I say that the trail broke me down to build me up into the new me. So.
And do you prefer the new you?
I love the new me.
So what didn't you like about the old you?
It's not that I didn't like the old me. It's
you
a
really
better
like
version.
the new you.
It's a better version of me. Yeah.
And how do you think? And how did it do that? You say it stripped you of emotions, or you got all your emotions out in a healthy way, I presume, because there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Right.
But you can see an improvement in Emily of now as opposed to Emily before. How interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's a real recognition of something changing then.
Yeah.
So you were obviously going along, obviously enjoying it. You met more family, you hiked with them as well.
Yeah.
At what stage did you start thinking to yourself, I might do this again?
Oh, I didn't. About a month into the hike, I'm like, I hate this long distance backpacking. Nothing is ever going to make me do this again. I don't want to do any long trails, maybe a weekend, or I just did not like it. And it was just brutal.
But you felt responsibility, didn't you? Weren't you being followed? Your blog was being followed by a couple of schools.
Yes, I had 2 schools following me, schools that I either taught at or our kids taught at or that I coached. I coached at both of them.
Oh, right.
And so there were grade 5 and grade 4 classrooms. So I couldn't really quit. And, how could I quit if these guys were following me? So that kept me going. And I had a lot of readers on my blog that would reach out and say, oh, keep going. We love what you're doing. I can't do it myself. So I felt an obligation to finish it for them because it didn't. And also my husband, Bruce, who was supporting me. It was no longer my hike. It was like our hike.
Yeah. And it does become that way, and it isn't just your supportive partner at home. It's the people who write to you who you've never met in your life. They're saying to you, it really inspired me, that blog post. I remember once getting into town and I didn't go out for a drink that evening, which for me is unlikely, let me tell you. I was writing a blog post and I just found a lot to write about. I wrote about 3,500, 4,000 words one night.
Wow.
Just on a blog post. Well, this is ridiculous. You're not here to write a bloody book. You're here to hike your hike and just record your thoughts. But you had that feeling that someone was going to read it and was going to be inspired by it and was going to want to follow what you were doing. So I'm sure you had that feeling as well, did you?
Yes, I did. At first I was just writing it for myself. And not really putting too much care into it. And then once I realized other people were watching it and enjoying it, I found a new type of responsibility, saying it's not just for me.
It's a surprisingly strong feeling, that, isn't it? And that's pretty cool. And you mentioned just now that you went into the Smokies. You were glad to have somebody to hike with, but also you were glad to have somebody to hike with in New England. Was that a safety consideration that made you want to team up?
Yes, because those are, really remote. Well, the Smokies are remote. And the Whites, being the weather so bad that, I just didn't want to go through it alone. So back to the Smokies, we're at Fontana Dam, and I was waiting for Bruce to get off a call, and I hear, hey, Black Bear. Oh, I'm crying again. I'm crying because I'm going in alone.
Of course you are.
Yes. And I hear, hey, Black Bear. And I turn around, and it's 2 gentlemen that I had met before, sometime in the hike, and they were also from Maine. And so then I started crying happy tears. I was an emotional, bubbling idiot through the whole hike. And so I said, we don't have to hike together, but can we swap numbers and give you Bruce's number so that we can just agree to stay at the same shelters through the Smokies, just during that section. And they're like, oh, sure. Well, that ended up being 2 months where I hiked with them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have a time when you actually were by yourself?
There was a lot of...
I mean, did you camp by yourself away from a shelter at all?
I don't think I camped by myself, like stealth camp or anything in the first year. The second year when I went, me and my friend we did stealth camp alone. Security in numbers a little bit.
Of course, yeah.
But I would camp away from myself at shelters, or if I was hiking with my family, I would set my tent away as much as I felt comfortable to do.
You actually, when we spoke before, you talked about your Katahdin day and how special it was for who went up with you, which of course was Bruce. Mm-hmm. And I think, who else went up with you?
We started the day, I camped with those two girls that I went through the Whites with.
Right.
My dear friends. But I had a nephew and another friend come and spend the night at Baxter with Bruce and I.
Right.
So the four of us, the girls hiked on since I had some family from home to hike with. Sure. And we were slower going up. So I had those four. But my niece and her two young children hiked up the backside of Katahdin and met me. And that was, I may cry through this, but you know how, did you have a nice day summiting Katahdin?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Well, I didn't. It was all fog. You couldn't see anything. Uh-huh. And so we were hiking up, and I'd been to the top of Katahdin before, so I kind of knew the layout that was under my feet, knew we didn't have too much further to go.
Sure.
And someone was hiking down, and they go, "Are you Black Bear?" And we're like, "Yeah." And I said, they go, "You have a waiting party up there." And I said, "Oh," they said, "Yeah, they're all waiting for you." That was Stephanie and my niece and her two children. And then all of a sudden I could hear, Aniem, are you there?" And through the fog, those children's voices were calling me.
Oh my gosh.
I could just hear, and and it was just...
That started the waterworks as well then.
It did. And then before I knew it, they appeared through the clouds. They had come down to meet me. And so that was just so... And they were young. I don't remember how old. I think 9 or 11 or, they were young.
What a great thing for them to see their aunt to go and do something like that. And when you got to the top, you didn't go straight to the sign, did you?
I didn't, no. Bruce had gone ahead to capture it on camera and video, and so the sign is there. But I didn't even though it was that sign that pulled me from Georgia to Maine.
Yeah.
And I knew, I'd been to the top of Katahdin, so I knew what it looked like. I knew what it was going to be when I got there, and that tug was great, but he was standing just off to the right of the sign, and I didn't even go to the sign. I went to him, and we just fell in his embrace. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the picture. It's very special. It's very special. It really is. So you finished, and you did it. Congratulations. That should normally be enough for most people, but like me, stupidly, for some strange reason, you were going to go again. So
this is after hating it, right? Yeah, I hated it.
So, and I would imagine once... Bruce, and you already told everybody that you hated it. Mm-hmm. And so I'd imagine Bruce was happy to have his wife back home. Yeah. 2 years later, you're off again. Was he just as supportive?
Yeah, I was home less than 3 weeks, and I was itching to get back to the trail.
Of course you were. So how did that thought process work? You decided to go back. And that was with the original person you were going to go with, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right.
So if I start in 2017, so the fall of 2016, I get another text from my dear friend Sharon, and she said, "Would you like to go hike the AT again?" I didn't even check with Bruce this time. I'm like, yes.
Oh, really? How interesting. And just prove him to be the perfect human being by the fact he was supportive straight away.
Oh, absolutely. He's like, "Okay, when?" And he started pulling out the books and planning, and That
is awesome. That really is awesome. Yeah. So how different was your second hike? Obviously, you went with a friend, so that's a different dynamic, and you were the senior person then in terms of hiking ability and stuff like that. So how was that for you, the second one?
I didn't have that fear in my brain because of not the unknown.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't afraid to go with just her and I and no one else around us. So that made it easier because I already knew, and I knew what to expect, and I knew we could do it.
I know that I walked down from Springer.
Yeah.
I started walking, went through the parking lot, and I suddenly thought, I got this. I know how to do this. I still had 2,200 miles to go, but I kind of knew what was going on,
Yeah.
And that's a surprisingly wonderful feeling, isn't it? That you know what to expect out there.
And you have a new type of freedom. You had a freedom before, but now you have a new type of freedom because you kind of know what's there. You know you're going to be okay. You
Yeah.
know, if you run out of food, you know, it's only so many more miles, and you've been hiking hungry before, so you know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's not going to be a big deal.
And did you change any of your gear for that, or were you pretty happy with the gear, so you kept with what you had?
I changed my mattress pad.
Right.
Before I went with a 3/4 length, because I'm not very tall, so the 3/4 length was fine, but I decided I wanted a little more comfort.
Sure.
But I ended up not liking it. Now I hike with my little one again.
All right, I see.
So other than that, I didn't change any gear.
And did Bruce come up Katahdin with you again?
Yes.
Did he? Of course he did.
Yes.
That's fair. I mean, I'm not going to talk about that hike so much because it's really the first one that is really the one that really, to me, the first one is the one that really mattered. But the second one was a different hike, I'm sure. You know, and I'm sure we could do a whole show about that. But you know, I'm conscious of that we're 30 minutes into the conversation where we haven't talked about the writing, because that's, you know, I met you at the author's tent at Trail Days.
Right.
When did you first consider writing about your adventures? Because it's not a natural thing for some people. Some people keep notes. Were you keeping good notes?
Yeah, I was keeping really good notes. I kept a really good blog and kept a really good journal, and Bruce kept what we call a captain's log. So where we stayed, what miles, all that information.
Right.
And I used my AWOL guide as a journal also, marking where we stayed every night or where I stayed every night.
I highly recommend people to keep relatively good notes, because it does otherwise blur into things. If you know, I'm sure, and I've said this to other writers recently, that when I started writing mine, the first time I hiked, I kept a blog. Second time I did a podcast. Even listening to the podcast, I can take myself back to that place and see things I don't even mention on the podcast, because it happens in my almost eyesight, in my imagination, or my thoughts of going back to that date. Did you find it took you back there?
Yes, because if someone were to say, "Well, what did you do at this shelter?" I'd be like clueless. But if I go and read my notes, it's like I'm right there. You know, I can see everything. So I find it for me, it's very important to write it down, not just use a digital copy like on your phone. I know everyone wants to go electronic and light, but there's something about keeping a paper journal.
Oh, definitely.
I
was told years ago, this is a complete diversion, by the way. I gave evidence in the High Court in the UK. I was an expert witness in a certain case, and I kept handwritten notes in the business that we were talking about, which I'd done about 15 years previously. And I could see by looking at what I'd written, what I was thinking at that time. And they said to me, handwritten stuff is so much different than the digital stuff.
Yes,
so
I agree.
That's worth thinking about. So not only did you write your own memoir about your trip, you also put together a children's book about it, didn't you, as well? Tell us how that came about, which I love that. And it looked great, by the way. Great illustrations as well.
Oh, my illustrators are awesome. They're just friends of mine, never done anything like that before. And they had given me one of them had given me a picture for Christmas. And I'm like, that's exactly the kind of artwork I'm looking for my storybook. And I gave them a couple of sample pages, and they gave me some sample art, and the rest was history. So,
but you actually wrote that fairly quickly, I seem to think.
I did. I suffer from, lack of a better term, insomnia. And sometimes I just don't sleep well at night. So I had already started my memoir, but this one night I got up and I just got thinking, I said, there's no children's books that I know of on the Appalachian Trail. So I sat down and wrote the children's book in about 4 hours overnight when I couldn't sleep. Sent it off to my editor, and she absolutely loved it. And then again, the rest was history. And it has a lot of good. It has a lot of good reviews and comments from people who get it.
I've looked, and you showed me at the time. And I say the illustrations are wonderful. And so I know that you're in your basement now.
Yeah.
In your
this
writing
is my little.
basement. And what can you see from out of your window?
If it was a clear day, and if I look through the trees just right, I can see Katahdin.
It's the most fantastic inspiration you could ever have. And so you could literally, from where you're sitting right now, you could look out and see Katahdin on a clear day.
It has to be a clear day, and it's way off in the distance, but I have to move to get under the tree branches. But yes.
Kind of worth doing, I should think. Yeah. So what's next in your writing life? You've done a memoir. And you've
Yes.
done the not cartoon book, the illustrated children's book.
Illustration, and there's also a workbook that goes on with the children's book, so schools use it.
I didn't see that, I don't think. Did I
It's
see
a
that?
black and white book.
All right, okay.
But it has it's like a workbook to go along with it. It's a teacher in me, so
Yeah.
it's a workbook. The first few pages, answer questions about the book, and then the inside covers information about the Appalachian Trail, hiking
Smart.
safety, that sort of thing. And then the last pages are more or less like blank pages for the
Sure.
children to draw about their hikes that they go on.
Nice. That's really
Yeah.
nice. I don't recall seeing that, but that's a terrific thing.
Yeah.
So what is next? What are you going to write next?
Happy Hiking 2. It's the second memoir.
Right.
And people are like, well, it's so long after your first hike. I said, well, I write like I hike, slowly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell me
but I
about
have
it,
I have a nature-inspired devotional that's
Mm-hmm.
at my editor's right now. And I also have 2 other children's books that are written, and my illustrators are tackling that. And
That's a cool thing. They are cool. What I think you've hit gold mine there. Are they children's books for hiking, to do with hiking as well?
yes, hmm
Wow.
they're about the AT.
You corner the market. you could take all the trails, couldn't you? Go ahead and do a children's book about all of it. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And what about next in your hiking life? What are you going to do next?
Well, I tried to go back out to the trail this year before trail days. Actually signed and got a hang tag because my son's out on the trail right now, or our son's out on the trail right now.
Right.
And you saw my dog. I have a new puppy.
I did see your dog. Now, give a shout out to your son, of course.
Yes, Patrick's out on the trail right now.
What's his trail name?
He doesn't have one yet.
Good Lord.
He's hiking
Really?
too fast. I don't think he's staying with anyone long enough to get one. So
Oh, dear.
I think he expects to be at Partnership Shelter today.
Nice. Order a pizza. Quite right.
Yes,
too.
I'm
Yeah,
sure he'll order one or maybe 2.
I'm sure he will. So are you going to do any of the other long distance trail, or is the AT the one that's really in your heart?
The AT's in my heart. I would love to get out west to do some of those other ones, but I'm kind of a scaredy cat, even though one of my mottos is
got to do it with these children's books. I mean, the PCT children's. I mean, it just opens up all sorts of possibilities.
Yes.
You've definitely got to do it.
But maybe but I've got the dog now, so the reason why I didn't stay on the trail or try to, and I'm still not convinced I can't maybe do a flip-flop.
Right.
But the dog just doesn't, the heat, he can't handle the heat. So that stifled that right off the bat.
Leave the dog with Bruce.
You saw the dog. He needs full attention.
Yeah, he needs a lot of attention. You're right. Yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Well, look, Emily, I think your books look beautiful. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for the books as well.
Thank you.
And it was lovely to meet you. And I'm really so pleased you came on the show. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon when you do your next children's book, which will be great.
Well,
All right?
thank you, Steve. It's quite an honor to be a part of your radio network.
Appreciate it.
I was so happy meeting you, and I'm definitely following you. And Bruce and I have been doing that for date nights, listening to your podcast.
Oh, and Bruce. You need to get a life, man. You don't want to do that. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole, trust me.
and as well as reading the books from the other authors that were at the
That's cool as well.
at the table. We've been doing nightly readings and
That's very
switching
cool.
off and on. So, thank you so much for this honor.
Not at all. It was lovely to have you on. And we'll catch up soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
Well, she's certainly adventurous, isn't she? And having met Bruce, I can see what a supportive man he is. We've often talked about the importance of spousal support if you're going to do this hike, but Bruce's first reaction to Emily wanting to go for a second time was to get out the maps. You just can't buy that, can you? I've included the picture of Emily embracing Bruce at the summit of Katahdin. It really is a wonderful indication of how she knew that it was a shared endeavour. She wanted to get to Bruce before she got to the sign. And don't forget to check out not only her hike story, but also the kids' version. The illustrations are terrific, and as I say, she could have a lucrative market there. And by the way, I'm including a link in the show notes to a terrific AT documentary, Walking Home. Emily features quite prominently in it, so I thought I'd share it with you in case you hadn't seen it. Now let's catch up with Dom Tammaro. When we spoke, he was sitting with his feet raised and eyes back, bringing down the swelling on his knee, and off the trail for a day. Here's Dom.
Hello.
Hey, Dom. Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm cleaned up. I've had a shower. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to record. And you sent me a message saying that you're heading to Waynesboro late this week for a Zero Shenandoah. You've done the Triple Crown. So talk to us how that went for you.
So the Triple Crown was amazing.
Of course.
We a whole group of us got up to, first of all, we went to Dragon's Tooth.
Yeah.
Which was far more rock scrambling. Dragon's Tooth we got to after a fairly violent windstorm.
Oh, gosh.
And so it was the night before, and there were a lot of blowdowns on the trail.
Right.
So there are a couple of, there was one spot in particular where I had to take my pack off, and I was actually on my belly crawling under this tree.
Oh, that sucks badly.
You couldn't go around it. You couldn't go over it. And there was space to go under it, but not for both me and my pack.
Right.
So it was a real challenge to get up there. Virginia has been far rockier than I expected.
There's plenty of stuff to get over, and that walk up to Dragon's Tooth was much more memorable the second time I did it. I'd forgotten how long it goes on for and how rocky it actually is. But it's a great walk. It's a great walk and really worth it when you get there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and it's I didn't climb up Dragon's Tooth, but
why not? That's it's easy to climb up there once you're there. Once you just get going, you got this fantastic view. Was it decent weather when you went up there?
Oh yeah, it was great weather. It was great weather, and there was a line of people waiting to climb up it, and
right.
I was looking to move on.
Right.
So,
actually, moving on from Dragon's Tooth is in itself its own problem, isn't it? Because coming down from Dragon's Tooth, going northbound, that's quite a mission, isn't it?
Oh, it reminded me of the White Mountains. The first mile or so coming down from Dragon's Tooth, there was a fair amount of rock scrambling. And of all the times I picked to get reversed, so there's this one section, which you probably remember, there's a 8 to 10 foot rock wall that's nearly vertical.
That's right.
And so I went down that, and then went to, at the corner of a switchback, there was a view. So I looked at the view. It was beautiful. I took a picture. I turned around, and the only trail that I could see with a white blaze was the trail that I had just come down.
Right.
But the trail that kept going down, it didn't strike me as the way to go. So I went back the direction I had just come from,
right.
And I faced that rock wall again. And when you look at the rock wall from the vantage point of needing to climb it, it doesn't look the same as when you need to go down it. So I climbed up that rock wall, kept going, and I said, gee, I'm going up. That shouldn't be. And then I saw a rock that I recognized, and I said, darn, I turned myself. Then I had to go back down.
Hang on, step out there. You saw a rock that you recognized.
Yeah.
That in itself is a statement, isn't it?
Yes. But anyway, so coming down from Dragon's Tooth, it was a challenge. It was the start. I've been having some problems with my right knee.
All right.
And that's what really woke. I mean, now I'm at the 800 mile mark, and or past it, and up until Dragon's Tooth, my right knee, which I had torn my meniscus on several years ago, has been offering no protest, was feeling good until coming down from Dragon's Tooth.
Oh, geez. So how's it been since then?
It responds well to a 0 day in town with ice and some ibuprofen and which is what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And then it's ready to go next time around. But
so once you got down Dragon's Tooth, you can't do the Triple Crown. Well, I'm sure you can do the Triple Crown on the day. Not that I would, or would even try to. What did you do? Did you stay overnight somewhere?
Stayed overnight at the the shelter campsite just below MacAfee Knob.
Oh, that's great there. It's a wonderful, that's a wonderful place, isn't it? It really is great.
Yeah.
Very, very atmospheric, because I think because you know you're going up MacAfee Knob the next day. Did you go up early in the morning?
Yes. Oh, it was packed with both day hikers.
Right.
There were a few people that I've been hiking off and on with that camped up there, even though you're not supposed to. But we won't tell anybody. We'll just keep that between us.
Right. Let's do that.
But it was great. We all took pictures. We hung out. It was cold up there, despite being a very warm time of year. It was cold up MacAfee Knob, but the view was extraordinary.
Yes. You know what though? It is cold because it's so darn exposed up there as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you said there were people sleeping up. Well, actually sleeping where you sit.
No, they were tucked into the nooks and crannies of.
Right. Okay. We had to move some people who were sleeping where everybody takes their picture. I mean, and they weren't moving. I said, "Excuse me, guys. Yeah, you need to get out of here because we wasn't pictures here, and we're going to take them." So
yeah, we took a great picture.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah, send me that picture and send me a picture, and we'll put it in the show notes. It'd be kind of cool. So that was the 2 Triple Crowns. Did you see Dawn there, or had Dawn already come up by the time you got there?
Dawn had already come up. I'm a slow hiker still. I'm fast as it was, but I didn't make it up in time. And I knew that was going to be the case, so that was fine.
Sure. And then actually the most underrated one, and I think in many ways one of the best ones, is the magnificent views you get from Tinker Cliffs. Did you enjoy that as well?
I totally agree. I was glad that was the last thing we did, because from Tinker Cliffs, you can see, you can't see Dragon's Tooth, but you can see where it is.
Yes.
You can see the route you took to MacAfee Knob. You could see MacAfee Knob, and then you could see the ridge that you walk along to get to Tinker Cliffs. So you can see all that you traversed in the past 2 days. Yeah. And then the view from Tinker Cliffs is absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, it's special. It's a real special place. And I say it kind of doesn't get anywhere near as much play as MacAfee Knob does, understandably in many ways. But really, it's not a disappointment. It's the third of 3 really great places to go to at that point. And you said that you're actually heading down the Priest later today. So you've obviously been up the Priest. Did you stay in the shelter and write your confessions?
No, I was at the Priest 2 days ago.
All right. Okay.
And I didn't stay at the Priest. I stayed I camped at the shelter before that.
All right. Okay.
And then sheltered at the Priest shelter during a rainstorm, 1 to 2 rainstorms. I don't know why I was sheltering there, because I'd already gotten rained on once. So I basically had lunch at the Priest shelter while it was raining out and read through all the confessions, which is absolutely hysterical.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And it's and heading down the Priest is quite a hike down, isn't it? It seems another one of those that seem absolutely endless, don't they? It
is. It's 3,000 feet, 4 miles, and that my knee had been doing well.
Sure.
Because I rested it, and after coming down the Priest and then ascending the 3 ridges, I don't know who said Virginia is flat. Virginia is absolutely not flat.
Yeah, it's not.
Because we went down the Priest and then the next day up the 3 Ridges Mountain, which is super, super rocky.
Yeah, it is.
The pattern is such that as you're at the base of mountains, there's nice dirt path switchbacks here in the south. And then as you get higher in the mountain, it becomes much more rocky. The 3 Ridges was very different. It was super rocky and rock scrambles at the bottom, and then well-graded dirt path at the top.
I tell you what I did in 2019, which I would do again if I ever, having remembered how tough it was to go up 3 ridges, I slack packed the day after I'd gone down the Priest, went back, get backwards, went down to the three ridges as well. So I went down both of those, which was so much better for me than going up one of them. So it worked out for me, and I'm totally unapologetic about doing it as well. So happy days as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that certainly woke my knee up again.
Oh gosh!
So I'm here with an ice pack as we talk.
Right, where are you now then?
I'm in Waynesboro.
All right, okay. Where are you staying?
At the Quality Inn.
All right, cool. And you're heading in then for to Shenandoah. You get into Shenandoah tomorrow, don't you?
Yeah. Tomorrow I'll to Shenandoah.
Well, you'll find that, funny enough, with a bad knee, that's probably not a bad place to be, John, because it's relatively easy hiking, and quite straightforward, not too up and down. And I'm not kidding you this time. It's one of the easier parts of the AT in Virginia, so I think you'll enjoy it as well. And there's a good chance that you'll see a couple of bears as well.
Yeah, looking at the elevation profiles, it looks like a much gentler terrain. So I'm looking forward to it. And, it generally just takes, my experience since Dragon's Tooth, it takes a day of ice and rest, and my knee will be fine. But I think going into a gentler terrain will be a good thing for it.
Yeah, you still taking ibuprofen a lot?
I will often. I try not to take it every day. When I
stop being a medical guy and just take it. Take 4 a day, you'll be okay.
Yesterday, I took mostly I take naproxen because it lasts longer, and so I'm taking the prescription dose the way I would prescribe it for a patient while here in town. Right. Elevating it. Ice, these water bladders are also great ice packs. So,
yes, good idea. Yeah, cool.
That's what I've been doing.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're keeping at it, Don. You seem to be enjoying it, which I know you're enjoying it. Send me that picture. I'd love to have the picture of you and MacAfee Knob, and we'll put it in the show notes. I'll say, all right?
That'd be super. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that now.
Okay, matey. You take it easy. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy Shenandoah.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I'll be in touch.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Take care.
He's a very positive guy, and I always enjoy catching up with him because he tries to see the bright side of everything out there. Actually, we continued chatting after we'd stopped recording, and he talked about how great he'd found the community to be, telling me a story about losing a pair of shorts from his backpack and other hikers tracing where they were, then arranging to bring them to him while he's holed up icing his knee. I know we've often talked about the community out there, but it is something that never, ever, ever disappoints. Thanks as ever goes to our supporters this week. We had recurring contributions once more from Jessica Diaz, Hugh Ickrath, Michelle Brown, Justin Mullins and Kevin Eastman. If you'd like to reward us for the value we bring you every week, head on over to hikingradionetwork.com website and click on one of those donate buttons. I'm sure that you and I will both feel glad that you did. Now Katie and her fill-in miles. This time we caught up with her as she was on her way into Pearisburg. Here she is.
Morning, Steve.
Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's a beautiful day out here.
Now, define beautiful. I've seen you've had some horrendously hot weather.
Okay. Well, actually, for the last few days, so about 3 or 4 days ago, we had 2 days straight of just steady rain. Oh. Everything soaked. And yesterday and this morning, it's just like in the 60s. It's low 60s, sunny, but I'm in these mangrove thickets. Not mangrove. What is it?
Rhododendrons.
That would be rhododendrons. I think in Florida. Oh my gosh. So I'm in these rhododendron thickets that are in bloom and just beautiful.
Yeah.
Last year I missed all the blooms, for the rhododendrons.
You're seeing the trail much the way section hikers often see a trail. I know you're trying to complete your full trail, but you're seeing the way section hikers do because they can go at different times of the year. And you sent me some notes, and one of the things you said that you take great care where you set your tent up at night because you said with storms rolling in through the night, I'm becoming aware that Virginia is a much tamer place in the springtime. Now, I'd never thought of that. So what's it like then? How bad is it at night?
Well, so it's, I guess it's not as the last 2 days have not been bad at all. The last 2 days have been quite pleasant evenings. But, I did Northern Virginia last May.
Right.
And it was everything was just mild, no afternoon storms. It was just so lovely. And it didn't feel treacherous. But these storms are wicked. Some of them are, it's just the wind. And now for the last 2 days, I've been out of the blowdowns. But, oh, my gosh, there were many, many fresh blowdowns across the trail. For at least 2 days of hiking after those storms. So...
Well, I tell you what, it's one of the shocks that, and I recall it, obviously the trail maintainers do a fantastic job clearing out the blowdowns, but when you see them, they are dramatic. I remember seeing one in that section when you come down into Fontana Dam, then you have to do that about a mile and a half bit before you get to the Fontana Dam Hilton. And we saw a blowdown which must have been 100 feet high. It was massive thing.
Gosh.
It was just absolutely huge. And you've just had a couple of zeros, and you say they're your first since you left Damascus. Where are you? You're in Bland, is it?
No, now I'm almost to Pearisburg.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I left Bland about 3 days ago on Sunday morning, and so I'm going into Bland. I'll eat and get a shower and resupply, but I'm not going to take a zero. I'm just going to,
So you've missed out on Woods Hole. I don't believe it.
I know. Well, the nice thing about hiking this time of year is you have these long days, and you can take a break, and then you just want to keep going.
Yeah.
so loving the long days out here.
Yeah, I'm sure. So what time is it getting light for you up there, and what time does it get dark?
Oh, well, the birds start around 5:30, and then the day, and I wake up when they, as soon as I hear them, I'm up, and then I, even after the sun's below the horizon, it's light till around 9 o'clock.
Wow,
so,
that's lovely.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so I can take all the breaks I want, and then I still am going to make good miles.
Yeah.
I don't like hiking in the dark, even with my headlamp, but so I still have plenty of time.
Have you encountered every sleeper's favorite bird, the whippoorwill?
I have heard them early on. I just love the birds. I just, it's like, for me, it's hard to be angry, even if I have to wake up early.
Well, I tell you, somebody said to me when I first went, you're going to take a gun like they normally say to people when they go hiking. Once I finished my first hike, I was thinking, I should have taken the gun. I could have taken to a couple of whippoorwills every now and then, I tell you.
Right.
So you've had a lot of heat, I know, hell of a lot this year. How bad has water been to find?
Really difficult. But, it's crazy. So 2 days of hiking and steady rain, right? Just like 10 hours of rain.
Yeah.
And still, you get to these water sources and there's no water. Yesterday, I was having to dip like a cup at a time in my bag because it was just this little puddle.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
But it has been, it has been tough, and for the water. So you just make accommodations for it.
Well, you drink water when you can, don't you? And as much as
that's right.
As much as you possibly can. So what are you carrying at the moment then?
So I have like a 0.7 liter bottle, and I try to keep that one full. And then when I get to a water site, I've carried more now. I add another 7.7 liters to that.
Right.
So a liter and a half or more. But, I just, like you said, you just try to drink up in the morning as much as, you're comfortable doing.
That's
and
right.
then then you fill up your water and hope for the best.
Where actually are you now? You're on the trail going to Pearisburg right now. Yeah, I can hear. I can hear the birds. I can hear the birds in the background.
I am about maybe 7 miles out of Pearisburg. So
That's
I'll
a lovely little
there.
hike. That's a lovely little hike.
Yeah,
I went with Jester when I went on my 2019 hike, and and Cushy, and we had a lovely day. It's a beautiful little place. There's a couple of little rocks you can climb on and so on. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And are you spending a lot of time by yourself, or are you seeing more hikers?
Well, I do. Amazingly, yesterday I ran into a young couple who were through hiking northbound, and they left May 18th, and they're already here.
Right.
I'm like,
wow.
Oh gosh, these guys are flying. So
just over a month.
Did see a bear.
Oh, well done.
2 days ago. Yeah, he was about 50 feet away from me, and it was amazing because it must have spotted me first, and I just heard crashing.
It smelt you first. That's what it did.
Definitely. And just took off. And I couldn't get my camera out in time, so I just decided to enjoy watching it. And, just beautiful.
It is a joy to see them move, isn't it? I'd never imagined. I always thought, only because I see them in the zoo before, I thought they were lumbering creatures, but they are fast, aren't they?
No, man, I was like, man, if I had to run through that understory like they did, I would have already fallen.
Yeah.
And just galloping through it, and just thick, black, glossy coat, just beautiful. Yeah. So that was pretty exciting.
Wonderful to see the sea live. Now, when we spoke last time, you were about to stay at the Burke's Garden Hostel, and we did say we'd talk about some hostels. So tell me about some places you stayed at you've enjoyed.
Yeah, Burke's Garden Hostel. I really, I think the owner is named Bags. That's his trail name, and just he's converted this old barn into a bunkhouse, and it's basically a farm that they've rehabilitated in that lovely valley.
Yes, beautiful.
About 0.7, maybe 3/4 of a mile off trail.
Ooh, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It is, but he will shuttle you.
Nice.
So back to the trailhead. So, and, just, it was pleasant. It was clean. And, they had a washer and dryer, Wi-Fi. I could get my frozen pizza from them. and they had waffles for breakfast. You could make your own waffles. So nice. I really like that. And he just opened this spring, and it's just been going by word of mouth and the Far Out app. So
that's cool. That's cool.
He was surprised.
I see you also stayed at my friend Lady Di's in Damascus. I stayed there at Trailblaze.
I love Lady Di's place. It's really, to me, even though I stay in the hiker room, with all the little twin beds,
sure.
It's just kind of more of a really nice bed and breakfast, but yet she, her prices are so good, and she makes the most amazing breakfast in the morning. I really, really loved staying with her.
Did you sign your name on the wall as well?
I did, yeah.
Have to do that. Quite right, so it's a great place. Yeah. And one I've never heard of, the Big Walker Motel in Bland.
Everybody should stay in one of these places. It's those old 1950s, 1960s motor lodges that have been refurbished. Very, I would just say, as basic as it comes.
Right, you were choosing your words there. So, but you enjoyed it.
But it was what I needed when I needed it.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you just need a shower that's relatively clean, and you need some laundry, and it's kind of nice to get Wi-Fi as well. So, I think those things are great. Well, look, it's a shame you missed out on Woods Hole, but because, as you know, it's one of my favourites. But I think the fact you stayed a Lady Dies sort of makes up for that. So, what's the plan coming up? What's next?
Well, I'm like I said, I'm going to spend a night in Pearisburg and then get back on tomorrow, and then I'm just heading to Daleville. Right. I want to, I'm hoping to get to Daleville within the next week.
Well, that means you would have done that. You would have done the Virginia Triple Crown as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, look.
Kind of excited about that.
Enjoy the rest of your hike today. Enjoy Pearisburg. A bit of a nemesis for me, Pearisburg, because it was after that I got bitten by a bloody dog. But, I never forgiven Pearisburg for it. It wasn't its fault at all. But enjoy the week, and you're going to love the Triple Crown. Just have the greatest time there.
I can't wait.
And we'll catch up with you about that next week, hopefully. All right?
All right, Steve. Take care.
Cheers, Katie. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I've been hearing that water has been trickier than normal this year, but as ever, she learned enough last year to know how to adapt and cope. Much like Emily, our main guest today, I'm sure that going again has really helped Katie use the skills she acquired last year to benefit her hike this year. Just before we conclude the third chapter of George Stefanos' Then the Hail Came, I wanted to share part of an email I got from George this week. He says, I spent the last few months creating a photo journal on my website from around 750 to 800 photos scanned from my 1983 slides. I believe this project to be one of the oldest through hikes on the internet to be documented in photos to this extent. I used the same web pages I sent you to help find the location of the photos from that analogue, non-geotagged time. Also to help create the words that go along with the pics. He goes on, I really enjoyed this bit. I enjoyed your first two readings from my book, but hearing someone read my words to me made me feel self-conscious in some weird way. I can't explain. So now I skip that part when I listen. I told a bunch of my friends about this, and the ones who are listening to the book excerpts tell me it's going great. I appreciate what you're doing, even if it gives me the "oh shucks" feeling to hear my own words. That was so lovely to receive. Some writers have been almost hostile about me reading their books. George could not have been more helpful. Let's hear the rest of his Smokies adventure. I'll see you next week. Later that night. Dave was already here at the shelter when I arrived at 4:30, as was another thru-hiker we had just got up to, a man from New York who has been signing himself in the registers as Marty the Deaf Polak. Marty was asking us about the thru-hiking couple from Wisconsin we met last night at Icewater Springs Shelter. He had become close friends with them on the trail. We were able to inform him that they were coming here to spend the night. It is almost dark now, and it looks as if no one else is coming. There are now 6 people here, and we're all thru-hikers. They are Dave, Marty, the Minnesotan we met last night, the Wisconsin couple, and yours truly. I'm enjoying all of the company, except for that fellow from Minnesota, who constantly whines about having no money for extras and tries to make the rest of us all feel guilty, as if we were all Rockefeller heirs or something. If we mention that we're planning to stay at the Inn at Hot Springs when we reach that trail town, he pipes in that the Jesuit hostel is all that he can afford. If I speak longingly about picking up some granola bars when I reach the store at Davenport Gap, he whines that they are too expensive for him. We all have our sad stories to tell. If he's trying to weasel contributions, he's chosen the wrong wealthy eccentric. Those millions stashed away from my gas station job are mine, all mine. In the 2 weeks that it took me to hike from Springer to Fontana, the only 4 fellow thru-hikers I met were Dave, Russ, Ron and Sonny the Wonder Dog. This past week I've caught up to or passed a mess of them. They appear to be stragglers from a large group which started a few weeks before Dave and me. In a way, it sucks that only thru-hikers are here tonight. Short-term hikers often carry too much food, and some are happy to rid their backpacks of excess weight. Last night, Diane gave me a dish of a rice and vegetable mix and a rice cake. Someone else gave me a cup of tea. This morning, I got a slice of fruit cake, and Diane gave me a few bites of bread. If I make it through the Smokies, Diane and Steve will have a lot of the credit for making it possible. For dinner tonight, I had a soup consisting of 4 cups of water, 1 package of dried onion soup mix, a tiny handful of rice, 3 squirts of liquid margarine, 1/4 of a bacon bar, 2 ounces of freeze-dried beef, and a handful each of freeze-dried corn and peas. A lot of salt and pepper made it palatable. I know that the margarine probably sounds like a strange touch, but there are so few fats in trail food that the body just craves them, and they taste okay in everything. I also ate 1/2 of my last 12 crackers and some peanut butter. I finished off the meal with a cup of tea and a cup of tang, which was also 1/2 of my remaining supplies of each. I finished the last handful of Diane's peanuts on the trail today. The cupboard is almost bare. I'm 14.7 miles from Davenport Gap Shelter, and it is imperative that I make it there tomorrow, which means that it would suck if it rains, which it just started doing again a little while ago. This shelter, like all of the rest of those at which we have stayed in the Smokies, has a leaky roof. Dave doesn't even bother asking me if my bag is wet anymore. Like everything else I own, my sleeping bag has been wringing wet for days. If I make it to Davenport Gap Shelter tomorrow night, I will be finishing my last pitiful dregs of my food at the meals that night and the next morning. From the shelter, it is less than a mile to a road, and less than a mile down that road to a little mum-and-pop grocery store. I hope that Mum and Pop are home, because I'm sure as hell going to need them. Dave and I have both resolved to carry much more food than we need in our backpacks henceforth, and damn the extra pack weight. I'm eating 2 meals in every restaurant and diner that I pass. I hate this feeling. I created a new soap opera tonight, The Young and the Senseless. It is the daily saga of dashing young men and women who are sitting around in warm, clean, dry houses and eating good food when they say, "Wouldn't it be fun to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail?" Today's episode features young, devilishly handsome George wringing muddy water from his socks in the hope that they will merely be damp when he wears them the following day. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of The Young and the Senseless. It's dark now, though the entire shelter is being illuminated by the blaze of the common lantern which Marty carries in his backpack. It's been a pleasure writing this entry under these conditions, rather than in the flickering candlelight in which I usually scratch out my words. It's still pouring though, so I'd better get some sleep. I may need a very early start tomorrow. One final note. Last night at Icewater Springs Shelter, when I had to keep making those trips outside, it was, as I've said, really nasty out. It was not nearly as amusing an experience for me as the previous night had been, when Dave was forced to go out into the howling tempest, though strangely Dave thought the last night was funnier. Go figure. It was also, in its own way, one of the prettiest nights that I've ever seen. A luminous white mist hung closely to every object, giving bushes and the trees the sort of fairyland appearance that they received from an ice storm, yet softer and more subdued. Each object seemed to emit from a soft, pearly radiance. Even now, 24 hours later, the vision is fading into a dimly remembered dream, like the aftermath of an LSD trip. The vision gradually fades, but the feelings evoked linger on, long afterwards. Sunday the 22nd of May 1983, mile 233.8. At this moment, if I never see the Smokies again, it will be too soon. The rain finally ended this morning at 9:30 and I was off. I know, nice early start, right? I had trouble sleeping last night. I dreamt that I had truly come to the end of my rope. The voice was telling me to quit and I was going to do it. I was despising myself for this and I suddenly screamed, "F*** you!" at the voice or at myself, I do not know. It was a dream, right? Anyway, as I shouted, I woke up. The lantern was still burning and everybody was staring at me. A few were laughing. I guess I yelled it out loud. I gazed back at all of them, calmly repeated the phrase I just shouted, rolled over, and went back to sleep. I did not feel the need to explain my personal demons to them. But I slept badly. The drumming of the rain on the tin roof of the shelter haunted my dreams. I just felt that if I did not make those 14.7 miles to Davenport Gap Shelter today, I would be forced to quit and my fragile dream of Katahdin would flicker out. What right does a loser have to dream about winning anyway? Morning limped in with the moisture-sodden air and grim perpetual twilight I'd come to associate with the Smokies. I started out wearing T-shirt, shorts, chamois shirt and rain jacket. Shreds of mist caught in the gloom beneath the trees like cobras preparing to strike. The trees and the underbrush were still dripping wet from the rain. I would have probably been more comfortable had I also worn my rain pants, but they would have slowed me down considerably. Today I needed speed. As I climbed Mount Gio, the weather further deteriorated. By the time I was about halfway up, a steady, soaking drizzle had set in. I would have traded my right arm for one brief glimpse of sun. The endless dreariness was eating away at my brain, and my dream of Katahdin was washing away in waves of frigid rain and fatigue like a sandcastle battered by a merciless surf. As I continued to climb, the raindrops swelled and thickened like festering corpses. They tasted like utter failure, or perhaps the taste was already in my mouth. The stage seemed set for the final act of my Great Smoky Mountains tragedy. My shorts and socks became saturated, but I just kept chugging up that mountain, swearing occasionally at the top of my lungs. The rain grew harder, the wind was blasting, and I was shaking from hypothermia by the time I made it to the top. I was terribly alone, bone-weary, soul-weary, and half out of my head, but I kept going. I would have been a fairly humorous sight had there been anyone else around to see me, but looking back years later, this may have been my finest hour. It was definitely near the top of the list. I crested the mountain and began a long, gradual descent towards Camel Gap. As I approached the gap, about 6 miles from Tri-Corner Knob Shelter, the sky began to clear. The sun actually peeked out of the clouds a few times, and I became slightly warmer and drier. I engaged in some pleasant conversation with a few fellow hikers I encountered, and my internal gloom gradually lifted also. That was when I looked back down the trail and saw that extremely annoying thru-hiker gaining on me. Instant testosterone rush. An immensely irrational primitive portion of my mind was not about to let someone that annoying catch up to or pass me on the trail. Cosby Knob Shelter, where I was stopping for lunch, was 1.5 miles of mostly uphill trail away. I kicked in some afterburners, which I did not even suspect I had, and left Gomer choking in a great big cloud of my dust. At that, I probably did him a favour. Most likely, he cannot afford to buy any dust of his own. I'd been at the shelter for 10 minutes with my canteens full, my boots and socks off in order to give my feet a break, and lunch cooking in front of me by the time he showed up. I'd driven my worn-out hulk 7.7 miles in 3 hours and 15 minutes, with only one quick call of nature stop along the way. Under the circumstances, that was extraordinary, but much more needed to be accomplished today. I took a nice, long 45-minute lunch in order to regroup. Dave stopped by briefly but didn't stay for lunch. He was on a mission of his own today, pushing hard in an attempt to make the store this evening. The final 3 thru-hikers from last night's shelter showed up as I was cleaning up and preparing to depart. It began to rain. The rain fizzled out at about 1:30 and I was off. An intermittent drizzle toyed with me as I climbed the last knob and began the long descent from the Smokies. I soon began hearing thunder. It was a disheartening sound for a weary traveller to hear just as he was beginning to emerge from a long dark tunnel along his journey. I raced down the trail, half jogging and half walking. I actually ran a few stretches of that descent. When I was about a mile from Davenport Gap Shelter, I simply had to stop for a symbolic gesture. I stepped off the trail into the surrounding woods to do something to the Smokies which they had been doing to me for days. As I resumed that last mile, a drenching downpour greeted me and accompanied me the rest of the way to the shelter. It is not nice to with Mother Nature. I arrived at the shelter at 4 o'clock, having covered the final 7 miles in 2.5 hours. I'm less than a mile from the end of the Great Smoky Mountains. It's now 4:30. I have enough food for a light dinner tonight and breakfast tomorrow, and then it will all be gone. I could try for that little store in the Gap tonight, but an establishment that small may very well already be closed, and I've no wish to become even wetter for no reason. If the store is open tomorrow, I'm going to buy 3 days' worth of food, even though there are only 33.8 miles remaining to Hot Springs, my next supply point. I've learned my lesson. What a life. I'm starving, dirty and wet, and I smell. My clothes are dirty and wet, and they smell. My sleeping bag is dirty and wet, and it smells. Everything that I own is dirty and wet, and it smells. Damn, do I need Hot Springs, North Carolina, right about now? All of this Great Smoky Mountains mud is working into the wound on my foot and infecting it. I neglected to bring with me one of the basic backpacking luxuries, a comfortable pair of running shoes to exchange for my uncomfortable leather boots when my hiking is done for the day. I have to take off my boots when I reach the shelters at night in order to allow my beat-up feet to heal a little, so I've been going barefoot. My family is including my running shoes in the supply package headed for Damascus, Virginia, but that is more than 200 miles up the trail. Speaking of footwear, a large hole has appeared in the toe of my right hiking boot. Both boots are beginning to disintegrate. I'd better get another pair soon. Somebody told me about an excellent place to buy boots near Irwin, Tennessee, my next mail supply drop after Hot Springs. Irwin is about 100 miles up the trail. I should definitely consider picking up some new boots there, unless my family can mail a pair to me soon. Much later, same night. Dave returned to this shelter at 6 o'clock with news that the store would be open until 8 o'clock tonight. As exhausted as I was, that just sounded too good to pass up. They did not have an extensive selection of goods, but the pint of chocolate ice cream and the Coke I bought as a treat for the long walk back to the shelter sure turned my world around. While there, I also picked up some chocolate chip cookies, candy bars, rice, instant oatmeal, Tang, M&Ms, peanut butter crackers and 2 boxes of Pop-Tarts for the hike to Hot Springs. Fittingly, as I was returning from the store, the overcast actually vanished completely for the first time in days. It was all blue sky with a few high, thin clouds from horizon to horizon. Perhaps, now that we've conquered the Smokies, everything will be all right. I'm 2 days' journey from Hot Springs, and I have solid food once more. For the first time in days, I have a reason to feel hopeful. The necessary side trip to the store has been taken care of, so I can just start trekking tomorrow morning. My only problem is that I have but one dinner remaining, and I could find nothing really suitable at that store. I seem to be the world's only backpacker who cannot stomach instant macaroni and cheese. I will simply have to come up with one makeshift meal over the next 2 nights. At any rate, I'm in much better shape now than at 5:30 and light years ahead of yesterday. I have already eaten half of the chocolate chip cookies along with the Coke and ice cream. There's a strange new light in my eyes tonight. The shelter is now almost full. 3 guys from Australia are staying here tonight. They really do not know what to make of us. The questions they've been asking Dave and myself are somewhat humorous. What kind of job do you have that you can take off for 6 months? A real crummy one. I quit. What are you going to do to survive when you get back? Get another job? They stare at us as if we were from another planet. They seem unable to comprehend our answers or our wild rebel souls. It will be interesting to be a fly on the wall when they go home and tell their friends about us. It has just started to rain again. I've been on the trail for 24 days and have hiked 233.8 miles. That means the Smokies have brought my daily average down to 11.7 miles per day. I need to average 14 miles per day in order to complete the Appalachian Trail in the 5 months with which I have to work. I need to make time. Nevertheless, despite the elements, my ignorance, and my own personal demons, I've won the battle of the Smokies. The war continues, though. It feels as if an eternity still remains. 1,904.7 miles to go.